When you're out harvesting soybeans this fall, what are you going to look at when you haul those beans into the elevator? Chances are you might just look at the net total dollars in the end. But here's one of the things we want you to think about. What is that soybean moisture? If the moisture is too high, let's say it's at 14%, you're going to get a dock. And then what's going to happen when you show the check and the settlement sheet to your wife? She's probably going to be mad saying, well, you should have let the beans dry down a little more. But we want to tell you today why we don't want you to let those beans dry down. In fact, we want you to take them even wetter.
Well, the most important thing about harvesting soybeans is to get started before they're down to 13%. If you don't start when they're at, say, 14% moisture, by the time you're done with that field, if you started at 13, they're probably going to be 11, or maybe even drier, depending on what the weather's like. If it's windy and hot and sunny and arid, well, yeah, it's going to take a lot of moisture out of those beans. So by starting just a little bit early, yes, you may be aggressive, and that first field, you might get all done with that field before they're down to 13. That's fine. I'll take a little bit of a dock at the elevator versus what I'm going to lose if the beans get too dry.
That's the whole thing here. What we're talking about today is the hidden yield loss of dry soybeans. Roughly what they figure is 1.5% shrink per point. So if, let's say, I had 8% beans versus 13, that's 5% less than what I can bring them to the elevator for. 5% times 1.5%, that's 7.5% loss. Let's say I have 70 bushel beans. 70 bushel beans times 7.5%, how many bushels are we talking there? Roughly, just for easy math, let's say it's 5 bushels. Well, if it's $8 soybeans, that's $40 an acre. That's hidden yield loss. $40 an acre. If you got 1,000 acres, that's $40,000. That's a tremendous salary for a whole year, and you can make that up in just a week or two harvesting soybeans if you get them at the right moisture.
You know, you look at what that shrink percentage is, and then you look at what you're going to get docked at the elevator too. A lot of times elevators will say, well, if you've got 14% moisture beans, I'm going to dock you 2% for every 1% of moisture extra we've got, or I'm going to dock you 4% when we get up to 15%. A lot of times when they get even higher moistures, they're going to dock more. I'm not saying to harvest beans at 16%, and Brian's not either. We don't want to have super wet beans because that can cause its own problems. As soon as those pods open really nicely and we don't have to grind things through the combine, 14% is a nice moisture percentage to start at. You can dry that 14 down to 13 in your bins with some air. You could also dry it down if it's 13.5, no problem. That's going to go really easy. It's just the fact of if you get way too wet, yeah, you're taking a lot of risk.
Okay, here's where I'm going to completely disagree with Darren. I want you to harvest at 15 or 16% moisture and have some type of system like AgriDry right on your grain bins if you've got lots of acres. Now, if you only have a few acres and you can get them all right in that 12 to 14% range, great, do that, okay? But what I am saying is if you've got lots of acres, it's going to take you a while to harvest. Harvest at least some at 15, 16% moisture just to get started. Throw them in the bin. And while Darren mentioned, yes, you can take that moisture out pretty easily with air, you're not going to be able to do that manually. You're going to have an automatic system to do that. You can look at the very simple charts. They're all over the internet, just showing you what's your humidity and what's your temperature. And at the right point, yes, absolutely, you can pull moisture out. For that matter, you can put moisture back in. So these systems, these newer systems for grain bins, they're awesome. We have some on our farm. You should too.
I was going to make that point too, Brian. If you harvest beans too dry, which you will, you're going to have some beans that get too dry. This is an opportunity to put some moisture back in there legally and doing it the right way, just by blowing some humid air through the crop. There's no issue with that at all. That would happen out in the field by nature too. So you have to look at those kinds of factors when you're looking at soybeans, trying to get the most in your combine and trying to get the most in your wallet too at the end of the year. You've got to get started on the early side. There's a lot of loss there by harvesting beans too dry. So get started early this year on your farm.
Hey, one last thing Darren mentioned about these wet beans. Okay, even if there is a little bit of dock, look at how much that dock is. Yeah, so what if it's 2%? If you gained 1.5%, you're only out 0.5%. It's no big deal. It's much better than losing a full 1.5%, even at 12% moisture beans. Run the math. Look at your elevator and what their docks are and everything else, but figure 1.5% shrink or 1.5% gain, and I would challenge you, I'll bet you that 14% moisture beans are going to make you more net dollars than 12% moisture beans if you haul them into the elevator. So it's something I really want you to think about, and it's something I need to challenge you with, because I'm going to guess your dad and your grandpa said, hey, start at 13% and then we're going to work our way down. I would tell you we want to start at 13% and work our way up. Or put it another way, start at 15 or 16% moisture. We want those beans a little on the wet side. You're going to make more net dollars than having them too dry.
One other thing that'll make you more money on your farm is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?